Nu zit hij op 17 kilo of zo.
Oké, prima.
Never stop the chase, baby.
Dit is wel wild tegengewicht op, hè?
Pak hem weer, pak hem alsjeblieft.
What's up everybody? I hope you liked that little introduction. My name is Ramon and I build fishing rods for a living. In this video, I will be building a custom set of rods built for a very specific purpose. But before I'm gonna tell you all about the set of rods, I'm gonna tell you all a little story about a little Ramon that started pike fishing. You see, I started pike fishing with a fly rod when I was about 14 years old. And in the Netherlands, when you visit the lowlands, you'll see all kinds of small canals besides the roads. These are called polders, and these small canals, which are often very shallow, hold quite a lot of number of fish, including pike, which makes it a very good starting area, chasing these toothy predators. As a young man, I would ride my bicycle to the polders in hopes of catching my very first pike. It took me quite a few tries to get one, but once I did, I was officially hooked. As the years went on, I was looking for bigger and bigger fish, so I also went exploring for bigger and bigger waters. I bought a belly boat, made my flies even bigger, and started to search for a giant pike. As you can imagine, with a bigger target, there was also a bigger timeline before reaching it. So, after 2 years of chasing big pike from the belly boat on bigger waters, I finally had my chance. I think it was the 6th of January 2016 when I hooked this giant fish, which is almost a decade ago at this point. So my buddy Damien and I, at the time, went fishing on a big canal which was connected to bigger waters. This was a passing route for giant pike, and we knew that it holds some really big fish. So, with a giant bream imitation of a fly, we went out in search of finding a giant bream eater. I remember that day vividly, as it was very, very cold. I think we started around 9 o'clock in the morning and didn't catch the fish until 4. My buddy Damien, around 3 o'clock, said his fingers were freezing because we were constantly handling fly line, which was very wet because of the water, of course, and the water temperature was around 3 degrees. So you can imagine that after fishing for about 8 hours, constantly wet hands, outside temperatures of single digits and 2-degree water, that it was very, very cold. However, with that giant fish in my mind, we kept plugging on, and I convinced him to keep going until at least 4 o'clock. And as we kept going, nothing happened. However, an hour later, around 3 o'clock, we came to a part which we call the S-bend. There's a very distinct place in the canal which looks like an S. It's where the corner goes from left to right, and my buddy told me that there was the place where a lot of the big fish were caught. After years of steady flow through that bend, there was a little pocket that was created by the current on the bottom. That's where she laid, and as I stripped my streamer over it, I had an insane take. The line was getting pulled out of my hands and I had to hold on to the rod very tight. I set the hook, and not even a second after that, the full fish came out of the water, and that's when I first had my glimpse of a giant pike. After she jumped out of the water, the fight continued. It was about 5 minutes. The water temperature was cold, and she was very tired very quickly. She had a stomach full of a bream, which was very visible on the photo, and I even remember that she had a tail of a bream sticking out, which was perfect, because I had a bream fly on, so we were targeting exactly what she was eating. After we came to shore, we went to measure her, and she was 1 meter and 16, weighing probably right around the 30-pound mark, which was an amazing fish, especially caught from a belly boat, and it was even more special that I had caught it on a fly that I had tied myself. After catching that fish, my obsession with giant pike to be caught from a belly boat with the fly rod had faded quite a bit. I wanted to explore more types of fishing. I went to do some perch fishing, some zander fishing, some carp fishing, with spinning rods, bait casters and other techniques. After hitting the goals I had set myself for those species, I was kind of lost and I didn't know what type of fish I wanted to target next. That's when I met Sebastian and Jelle, two people from the middle of the Netherlands who were very specialized in catching giant pike. I didn't know how they did it, but I wanted to learn very badly. So I asked them kindly if they would show me what they did and just take me along for a day or their fishing. I didn't need to catch a fish myself. I just wanted to learn what they did and how they did it. They were very open with me and taught me all that I needed to know so that I could do it myself and be successful at it. So the next winter came and it was time to test out the new method that I had learned from those two guys. It's called ledgered deadbaiting. This technique involves casting out a dead bait to the bottom and letting it sit there. Sounds simple, right? Right. Well, there was quite a lot of things that you had to make sure to get right. You had to be in the right spot, you had to know that the fish were there, and you had to give them a bait that they wanted to eat. Luckily for me, I was an apprentice of two absolute specialists who have done this type of fishing for 8 years before I met them. My goal was simple, but not easy to achieve. To build a set of rods, to use this new technique, and to catch a new personal best this winter. For this technique, you need a very specific set of rods, because you need to cast out a lead and a deadbait rather far, be able to set the hook on a giant fish with small trebles in its mouth at distance. And also, when it gets close, you need a rod that isn't too stiff so that when a giant pike shakes his head, that it will lose all the hooks out of his mouth and lose the fish as a consequence of that. Sounds rather difficult, right? Well, so you need a powerful blank that is rather long so that you can cast very far, that has power down low so that you can set the hook right, but that does bend under load of a big fish and will take up all the shock of the big head shakes of a giant pike. Now that I knew what the task was at hand for these rods, I knew which blank to get. The Harrison Ballista. A blank line from Harrison, which has been around for 20 years. So it is a very old design, however, it is now made with modern day carbon. So it was very light, very responsive, soft, but also very powerful. I went with a length of 12 foot and a test curve of 3.5 pounds. This sounds very heavy, but the carbon is rather soft, so it will bend under load. With that said, I did need to chuck around 200 grams at distance, so it did need that powerful test curve. All that was left to do for me now is to build the rod. Also sounds simple, but not always very easy. I had decided to go with an old school flared grip from EVA and to match the handle to the reels I was going to use, which are the Shimano 14000 Ultegra XSE. These are saltwater surf reels, and I thought that's what looks closest to the type of fishing that I'll be doing. These are big and powerful reels and can handle big and strong fish. Those should do. For the guide setup, I went with a guide spacing that they often used in surf casting. What I mean by that is that one guide is reversed, which is the stripper guide, and the rest of them are anti-tangle. This will help to guide the line through the guides and make sure that big leaders and knots will not get tangled on them. During testing, this also gave me the best distance control and line management, so I decided to go with this guide setup. As you've seen by now in the video, the rod blanks are green, so I decided to match that with some green abalone. This is just a personal taste and I wanted to give that extra custom feel to these rods. The rest of the guides I wrapped in a black nylon thread and some silver metallic, just to keep it simple looking throughout the rest of the rod and to match the handle section in terms of color. As you can tell, if rod building doesn't work out in the end, I can always become a professional singer. Well, we're about 10 minutes into this video, and if you haven't got tired of my voice, or my bad storytelling, or even my bad singing, I would like to ask you if you can like this video and subscribe down below. I don't like to ask this at the start of the video, just because you don't know what's happening in the video yet, or if you even like me. So, after 10 minutes and you're still watching, it might be time to subscribe. As you can tell, I'm now on the last step of the building process. Putting on the tip guide with some hot glue, making sure it's centered in comparison to the rest of the guides, and then it's time to apply some epoxy to the thread. Did you know that without applying epoxy to the thread, you could probably fish your rod quite a few times? Well, after that you'll probably damage the thread and screw up all the work you've already done, but you know, you can. Anyway, we apply epoxy to the thread, and this is the first coat. In my opinion, the first coat of epoxy is the most important one, because you are filling in the gaps of the guide feet. If you don't fill in the gaps between the guide feet properly, the guides can come off during a cast, or even just regular fishing. Water can also be trapped underneath the guide, eroding it from the inside and making sure your guides rust, or damage the epoxy that is applied above, making it crack. You will only see this after a few years of use, or very hard use for a year, but your rods will essentially be very damaged and unusable. That's why, in my opinion, the first coat of epoxy is the most important one. After the first coat is dried, there's always some little stick-ups. This is where you pull the thread through of the rest of the thread, and it will leave a little bit of a point. By cutting this off and applying a next coat, you will get a nice, clean, level coat. On my rods, I usually do 3 coats. One is the primer coat, which will soak the epoxy through the thread. The second one is to make an even more flat surface. And the third one is to make everything completely flat and perfect. You can always get some imperfections in the second coat, but you'll always fix them in the third. As I've talked with more rod builders around the world, we always discuss how many coats we do. Some people do 1, some people do 2. I even know a guy that does 7. Now I think that's a bit overkill, and I've gotten the best results with 3, but whatever floats your boat. Whenever you apply epoxy with a brush, there's always some little bubbles. I've tried every different method to get rid of these bubbles, but for me the butane torch, whilst rotating the rod at a low pace, seems to be the best way to get rid of these bubbles. And as I'm torching these wraps, you can already see how level the epoxy is. They do deserve one more coat though, just to get them perfect. In between the second and third coat of epoxy, I always apply my decals. If I do it in the first, there will probably be an uneven surface. And between the second and third, I'll always get a slightly more even surface so that the decals will be nice and level. I'm only gonna show you me applying the third coat over the decal section, as you've already seen me apply epoxy on the rest of the guide wraps. But trust me, I've put some epoxy on every wrap once again, and here it is, the finished product.
Dat is vis.
Dat was de winkel.
Ja, dat is vis. Ja.
Ja, ik kan het.
En de lijn trekt nog steeds strak. Zie je? Dit is vis. Dit is vis.
Nee. Happen?
Ja, als hij er nog zit.
Dit is wel tegengewicht op, hè?
Dat is een goede vis.
Ja, dit is tegengewicht.
Ja, ja.
Nou. Nog even zijn flankgewicht. Dat is toch best oké. Linksput.
Ja, het duurt nog wat voordat hij hier is, denk ik.
Ja, hij zit op de kant. Het is wel een meter.
Dat is een dikke meter.
Dit is een hele dikke meter.
Dit is een goede vis.
Ja, tegen de 1,10.
Wat ze met de botsen.
Ja.
Lekker hoor jongens. Kijk hier. Pak hem Pip, pak hem alsjeblieft.
Ik zal mijn best voor je doen.
Loop naar achter.
Ja.
Pak hem, pak hem. Pak hem. Ja! Ah, lekker man.
Die is echt 1,15 man.
Ja, hij is veel dik ook. Niet zo, hij is veel dieper.
Die is groot gek.
Pip.
Ja, het is wel echt een hele lange vis, dat klopt. Ja, hij was een korte drill, man.
Ja, dat is een hele grote snoep. Snel op. Hoe koud? Ja, die ligt hier op de...
Moker,
Ja, die is eerder gevangen volgens mij.
En that's it.
Dat is over 21, gaat richting de 1,30 kerel.
Dit is mijn PR.
Dit gaat richting de 1,30 kerel. Richting 1,25 joh. Dit is de grootste snoep die ik ooit heb gezien.
Ja?
Ja.
Of nou die verminder?
Verminder. Nu zit hij op 17 kilo. Of
17 kilo. Oké, prima.
16,5, 17 kilo.
Dat is helemaal niet.
Oké. Awesome fish.
Ja, trek weg. Ja, die gaat weg. Die gaat weg.
Woehoe! Woe! 1,25 pik.
Oh yes.
Lekker
Weer
pik.
deze tijd, hè? Weer aan deze tijd.
Gefeliciteerd. Woe! Woe! Ik krijg er gelijk warm van.
Never stop the chase, baby.
Moeten we aan blijven hangen, hè?